And that leads us into the first kind of topic of this podcast, which is I'm asking myself, what is the definition of money? And first, I answer it from my point of view. And my point of view is money is a paper or digital currency that buys you things. That was my definition. And then I went on Google, and this is what Google said. Money is a current medium of exchange in the form of coins and banknotes. So my definition, Google's definition, is pretty similar. Paper or digital currency that you can exchange for things, a medium of exchange. So then I asked myself, what does money exchange for? Well, you can pretty much buy anything with money when you really think about it. So the easier way to approach this question is, what can't you buy with money? Now, I know this is a big philosophical debate, but we're going to put happiness in the can't buy. And I would say, actually, you can't really buy any long-term emotional thing. So you can't buy happiness. You can't buy long-term peace, long-term happiness. You can't buy long-term enjoyment, fulfillment. Pretty much any long-term emotional thing you cannot buy. And of course, you cannot buy salvation because that needs to be paid with the blood of Jesus Christ. So anything that is soul related, anything that is long-term emotional related, you cannot buy with money. But essentially everything else you can exchange for money. You can exchange labor for money. You can exchange physical property for money, intellectual property. You can exchange pretty much anything except long-term emotions or soul-based things. So now we have the definition of money. We know what it exchanges for. So how are the things that money exchanges for created? So I'm not asking how happiness is created. I'm not asking how peace is created, because those things you can't exchange with money. How is all the things that you can exchange with money created? So if I hire someone to work for me, I'm exchanging money for labor. That person who's giving me labor is giving me their time and their energy. Okay, what if I go and buy a chair at the store? How is that chair made? Well, someone spent their time and energy making that chair and they sold it to me. Okay, what if I go to school and I learn something intellectual in class and I pay to go to school? How was the thing that I learned in school created? Well, the teacher spent their time and energy creating the course and teaching it to me. So essentially, every single thing you can buy or exchange with money was created with someone's time and energy. Therefore, a better definition of money is the digital or paper form of time and energy. So this is, I'm start to trip out. I go from definition of money to what does money exchange for, to how are the things that money exchanges for made, to, all right, now I have this new definition of money, a paper or digital currency, or time and energy in the form of a paper or digital currency. So then I'm getting all deep with myself and I say, how is money made? This is the most simple way that I knew. In part 2 of this podcast, we're going to break how money is made down because it's actually absurdly mind-blowing. But for simplicity, what I've heard and what you guys have all heard and what we know to be true is that the government prints money. So then, if money is time and energy in paper form and the government prints money, what does it cost the government to print money? Well, it costs the government the price of the materials. So money is made with very cheap metals and it's made with very cheap paper. So essentially, the government pays nothing to make money. The government just prints money. So therefore, money is time and energy in digital form. Who makes money? The government. How does the government make money? By printing it for essentially nothing. So the government prints money for essentially nothing and then can trade it for your time and energy. And I'm thinking to myself, slavery? Question mark? Let me say that again. The government prints money for essentially nothing, then trades it for your time and energy. Slavery? Question mark. The government prints money for essentially nothing, then trades it for your time and energy, and then taxes you. So the government prints a piece of paper that it can exchange for your time and energy, and then it taxes you to pay them back time and energy. I hope I'm explaining this well, because when I learned this, and I really just learned this by thinking, when I just learned this by thinking, I was like, that is absolutely absurd. And maybe it's not absurd to you, but it was absurd to me. And I wasn't going to stop there, because what do you get that information, you just go, okay, so now I might be a slave to the government, or I might be a slave to money. What do I do with this information? And I'm thinking about it more and more and more. And I have a very personal example. My dad makes good money. I don't know the exact amount of money my dad makes. He's never told me. But we live in Southern California, 5 minutes away from the beach. My dad makes good money. I don't make good money. I have like less than $100 in my bank account. Maybe I shouldn't say that. But anyways, my dad makes good money. However, my dad works from the moment he wakes up pretty much until the moment he goes to sleep. Sometimes he'll watch TV for an hour or two before he goes to bed. My dad gets his Bible studies in. He mentors people, so he's still in the Word, which is the most important vitality of life. But pretty much my dad wakes up, works, and then he goes to sleep after working. And I was thinking about that. Is my dad rich? And I want to remove my dad from this equation, because I bring up the example of my dad to show you that I've personally witnessed this. But now I'll move on from my dad as an example, and I'll just talk about if someone has loads of money and they wake up, work every second of the day, and then go to sleep, is that person rich? I don't think so, because as we stated earlier, money is time and energy in paper form. So if I have millions of dollars of time and energy in paper form, but my whole day is filled with work, so therefore all my time is occupied by work and all my energy is drained by work, am I really that rich? And I just sat there and thought to myself, no, I don't think so. And I'm going through all these realizations with my friend Chris Hopkins, and my friend Chris Hopkins hits me with one of the craziest quotes I've ever heard. And I'm just going to make sure that I quote him correctly. This is what my friend Chris Hopkins says. Given everything we just discovered, the richest person is not the person with the most money. The richest person is the one who inputs the least and outputs the most, because the goal is freedom. Let me say that again. The richest person is not the person who has the most money. Because if someone has abundant money, but they work every second of the day, well, money is time and energy in paper form, and they're spending their time and energy all on work. So although they have it in paper form, do they really have it in their life? Therefore, the richest person is the one who inputs the least and outputs the most, because the goal is freedom. Wow, that's so good. This is what Chris Hopkins recommends, going off that quote. I hope that quote gives you a little bit more direction of how to approach money. And I want you guys to know I'm not some expert on money. Everything I've learned is recent, but I just know that I do not want to be a slave to money. I don't want to be a slave to the government. I want to be a slave to Christ, which we're going to talk about in part 3 of this podcast. But given that the richest person, my new definition of the richest person, as well as Chris Hopkins, is that the richest person is the person who inputs the least and outputs the most, because the goal is freedom. This is what Chris Hopkins recommends you do, and I think it's a pretty good plan, is you, as far as money, calculate how much money would I need to live my dream life. Let's just say it's $1 million to live my dream life. That includes how I want to eat, how I want to travel, the house I want to buy, etc., etc., etc. I know $1 million probably actually wouldn't be enough for that, but let's just hypothetically say $1 million is how much you've calculated you would need to live your dream life. What you'd want to do is obtain $1 million, which I know that's just silly to say obtain $1 million, but this is not how you get money podcast. This is just that's a different episode. So you go watch Alex Hermosi or something. I don't know. That's a separate topic. But let's say I've determined $1 million would be enough to live my dream life. What you would do is you would obtain $1 million. Then you would ask yourself, is this really enough? Because you would have the money and you'd get to be able to experience and calculate. Okay, if $1 million is enough to live my dream life, what I should now spend the rest of my time and energy doing is not how do I make my $1 million $10 million. What you should spend your time and energy is how do I output $1 million with the least amount of input. So if I'm working 12-hour days to make $1 million, what I should do is say, how can I make $1 million in 8-hour days? How can I make it in 6-hour days? Not how can I take my $1 million portfolio and make it 100 billion, because that's pointless. Then you're just giving up your time and energy to make more paper time and energy, and you're just stuck in the rat race even though you think you've escaped it. That was my huge breakaway with money is time and energy, which is the first section of this podcast. 16 minutes. I hope that was valuable to you. If not, I'm sorry. Now, given my personal think work, so part 1 of this podcast was me analyzing myself, going deep, trying to question myself with money, trying to question my motives. And I also want to touch on part 1. When I talk about your dream life and calculating all this is how I will approach money, but money is always below God. God comes first. You seek first the kingdom, Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom above all else, and everything else will be provided to you. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. Seek the kingdom of God above all else, and everything else will be taken care of. Your focus shouldn't be money, at least coming from me. So I just want to tell you how I'm approaching money, but it's certainly not my primary focus, or the goal is that it's not my primary focus. I'm sure I've fallen into that trap at times. And actually why I've avoided talking about money online or this money system is because I would take the Bible and be like, I literally can't talk about money because money is not what I'm supposed to be focused on. So I've done such a good job on not focusing on money, but I also think I've missed out on using money as a tool. And so I'm excited to focus on it, but I need to make sure that I never put it above God.